Yeah, the sentiment here in Australia is really split at this stage. And of course, it changes as the story unfolds because it's really difficult to predict what will happen next. But what I can tell you, the latest situation here is that Novak Djokovic has been taken to a hotel, which is a quarantine facility, while his lawyers mount a challenge in the Federal Circuit Court in Melbourne, which is really due to begin about now, claiming that this visa denial is unfair and unreasonable. Among the things that have been discussed in that court is that if he can get access to a tennis court while the situation is resolved, and that Tennis Australia wants a decision to be made no later than Tuesday for him to still play in the Australian Open. What all this means is not clear at this stage, but it does not appear likely that, despite the fact that Australian Border Force wanted the world #1 tennis star to leave the country tonight, he will be doing so at this stage. It seems that he's likely to stay for the time being. Now, you mentioned that medical exemption. It's being reported here in Australia that Novak Djokovic attempted to enter the country by claiming that he'd had COVID in the past 6 months. The natural immunity argument, which is used as an exemption in some other parts of the world, but not here in Australia. The Australian government says that it notified Tennis Australia months ago that Djokovic would not be able to apply for an exemption under this criteria. So exactly how this has come into fruition, that health authorities, the Immigration Department, Tennis Australia, and of course the world's #1 tennis player himself have managed to not communicate with each other and end up in this situation remains to be seen. Perhaps we'll find out in the days ahead what exactly has occurred.
Certainly, from the sports perspective, he stood to make history if he wins at this tournament. So there was some obvious motivation to try to get him in. But now we also see reports he's trying to mobilize Serbian authorities to help him in this fight here. And this has risen to the top political level. We're hearing Prime Minister Morrison talk about it. Was that finally, did it finally force authorities locally to take a turn here, given the political level that it rose to?
Yeah, it's not really clear at the moment what happened. It does seem that multiple governments at the state and federal level are trying to wash their hands of this situation. And of course, the Victorian government is on one side of politics, the federal government is on the other side of politics. And they're both saying, to some extent, it's not their decision to make, that rules are rules. So it is certainly a case in this situation that politics is getting intermingled with sport. But what seemed to surprise Australian journalists today at the press conference is when the Prime Minister said that unvaccinated people from other countries are actually mostly not able to enter Australia unless they have some form of exemption. So even if they want to quarantine, in this case, Djokovic would perhaps either have to have this denial of the visa overturned or very rapidly apply for another kind of visa. And why that's important is that the Victorian government or the federal government could actually support him in that visa application, but it does not seem at any stage of the political level that there's a will to do so at the moment, despite the fact that the Serbian president has tweeted out his support for Djokovic, a Serbian national, saying that the experience he had in the Melbourne airport was harassment.